everybody, and welcome to Chapter 4. Today we're going to be talking about Concept 2, where we will be finding the domain and the range. Domain is an important word for you to remember, and range. Let's see, we'll do range in green. Range of relations and functions. What is a relation? Well, if you look here, a relation is a set of ordered pairs that shows a relationship. Get it? Relation, relationship. So anytime you have ordered pairs where you've got numbers that are connected together or grouped together, it's showing a relationship between those two numbers. So we call it a relation. And every relation has what's called a domain and a range. Remember in Concept 1, we talked a little bit about how sometimes the X is called the domain and sometimes the Y is called the range. Well, one of the ways that I like to remember that helps me just kind of keep it straight and remember what's what are my two pals, Docs and Roy. You can think of it as, I don't know, maybe they're two little puppies, Docs and Roy. And this is how this works. For the domain, oops, we'll use pink for domain. Domain, which starts with D, is connected to the X because domain is the X value. Range, which starts with R, is connected to the Y value. So domain is X, Docs, range is Y. Roy, Docs and Roy. So we're going to find Docs and Roy for some of the relations that we have in our packet today. Now, in this relation, we have a group of numbers, we have ordered pairs, that is showing the relationship between the age of a giraffe and its height. So the relationship from the age to the height. Now, if we look at the information, you can see that as the height or as the age gets older, actually they're not in order. That's not very helpful, is it? So one of the first things that we'll need to do is put these in order. So we're going to write them as ordered pairs. Ordered pairs. That's one way that you can show a relation. We're going to put them in ordered pairs, and we're going to put the age in order, okay, in number order. So ordered pairs, the X comes first. So that's going to be these values up top. So let's see. The first one is 14, and that's connected to 5.0. Next we have 16, which is connected with 4.5. Next we have 18, which is connected with 4.0. And then finally we have 20, which is connected with 5.5. So I just took those pieces of information, those numbers that are related, and I put them in ordered pairs, with the first numbers being the X values and the second numbers being the Y values. And we just put them in a little bit of an order so that we can kind of see what's going on with this relationship, with the height as the age progresses, because that makes sense. The next way that you can show a relation is with a T-chart. You can show it with a T-chart, and it is called a T-chart because it looks like a T. Go figure. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the X values on the left, and we're going to put the Y values on the right. So remember the X values in an ordered pair come first. So that means that all these numbers here are our X values. We're going to keep them in number order just to keep things nice and organized. So 14 goes with 5.0, 16 goes with 4.5, 18 goes with 4.0, and 20 goes with 5.5. And that's a T-chart. It shows the X value and the Y value for this relation, for all the points of this relationship. Now, the third way, and you'll see I have these numbered wrong. I apologize. This is the third way that we can show the relationship with these numbers, and that's with a mapping diagram. And a mapping diagram is actually one of my favorites, and you'll see why in just a little bit. Mapping diagram is awesome. Here's how this works. It is, you're going to draw a big circle on the left, a nice long oval, I guess, and a nice long oval on the right. And this first oval is going to be our Docs oval. Okay, so that's going to be our X values. And our second oval is going to be our Roy oval. So we have a Docs oval and a Roy oval. All right, so here's the thing about mapping diagrams. You want to be sure that both are in number order, okay? and that's for both of these. So I'm just going to write myself a little note out to the side. Number order for both. So our X values we find from our T-chart. Quick and easy, they're already in order. So we do 14, 16, 18, and 20. And then for our Y values, we're going to put them in order. So the smallest is 4.0, then 4.5, then 5.0, and then 5.5. So now both of them, our domain and our range, our X and our Y, are both in number order. And we're just going to connect the dots. Let's see, we'll connect with orange. Why not? So let's see, 14 goes with 5.0, 16 goes with 4.5, 18 goes with 4.0, and 20 goes with 5.5. So you just kind of play this little game of connect the dots and draw your lines to show which value of the domain goes with which value of the range, and you're good to go. Okay, so that's a mapping diagram. And then the last way that you can show points is by plotting it on a graph, or you can show this relationship by plotting these values on the graph. Now, our values go up pretty high. I'm going to switch a different color pen so you can see this a little bit better. If we go back to our relationship numbers, our values go all the way up to 20. And this graph that I have only goes to 10. So I'm going to change the scale of the axis, okay? And what that means is instead of counting by ones, I'm going to count by something different to make it a little bit easier for me to put my points on here and get them all in this one graph, okay? So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to go by 2. So this is 2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Okay? So that fits all of my domain numbers, or my X numbers, on the graph. Now for my Y numbers, I'm going to, if you go back to your relationship numbers, notice how we don't have any numbers going all the way up to 20. We do have some halves. Okay? I want to be able to plot halves. So on this axis, I'm going to go by half because that works for my Y values. So this is a half and this is 1. 1.5, 2. 2.5, 3. 3.5, 4. And anytime you don't go by ones, you want to make sure that you write your numbers on your graph. Okay, so that way the person who's reading your graph knows what values they stand for. So let's go ahead and plot our points on this graph. And what I'm doing here, I wish I could zoom out a little bit more, I'm going to take these ordered pairs and I'm just going to use them as an address to plot points on the graph. All right, so follow along with me here. I've got 14, 5.0. So here's 14. It's going to go all the way up to 5.0. 16 goes to 4.5, which is here. 18 goes to 4.0. And then 20 goes to 5.5, which is actually a little bit off the graph up here. All right, so that's how you plot those points or show that relationship on a graph. Now, once you have analyzed your relationship in every possible way, you're often going to be asked to find what's called the domain and the range. Find the domain and find the range of this relationship. Now, this is where the mapping diagram is my favorite. If you look at the mapping diagram, here's what's awesome. They're already in number order for the domain and the range, which is important when you are describing the domain and the range as an answer or as a piece of its own information. You want to make sure that you put them in number order. For the mapping diagram, it's already in order, and they're already separated into our X values, which is our domain, and our Y values, which is our range. So all we have to do then is take these numbers and write them in the domain bracket. These little things are called brackets. They look a little bit like parentheses, but they're kind of different. They have this little swoosh in the middle. So use this space down here. You can practice making those brackets. They can look kind of crazy. Just make sure they don't look like parentheses, okay? Once you're comfortable with brackets, go ahead and list your domain values. We've got 14, 16, 18, and 20. Those are our domain values for this relationship. Then our range values are 4.0, 4.5, 5.0, and 5.5. So there's the domain and range for this relationship, for this set of numbers. Now let's take a look at another one. Go ahead and turn the page. We're going to look at the relationship between the fat grams and the calories in some common foods that you guys might find in your kitchen. So the first thing we're going to do is write it as ordered pairs. And again, I'm going to try to put these in order by the X value, because I know that in the long run, that's going to be the most helpful to me is if they're in number order. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot. You've got quite a few of them, so give yourself space. Here's a 1, and it's paired with 70. So there's my first point. Any more? There's a 1 paired with 45. Then I think it's 4 and 90. Then 6 and 80. Then I've got 8 and 150. 9 and 115. 10 and 185. And 19 and 245. So I've taken all of this data, all these numbers, and I've just kind of organized them a little bit, putting them into ordered pairs with the X and Y values in the right places. Next, let's do a t-chart. And do our t-chart. We've got X and Y. All right, let's see. I've got 1 and 70. This part should be pretty easy because you're just going to follow your points straight down, because again, at this point, it's really the X value that needs to be in number order. 9, 115, 10, 185, and then 19, 245. So now we have our t-chart. We've got our ordered pairs, we've got our t-chart, we've just followed straight down. All of the information is included in these two. Now we're going to go down to our mapping diagram, and this is where things get a little bit different. We have two ovals, one for our domain or our X values, one for our range, our Y values. So this is our dox, and this is our ROI. And the X values are already in order, but what I want you to pay attention to is, see how 1 happens 2 times? Well, I only have to put it in once for the mapping diagram, okay? I just need to make sure that every number is represented. So I have 1, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 19. Then for my range values, I'm going to put them in number order, and again, if I have any repeated, I'm only going to put them in one time. So let's see, it's going to be 45, 70, 80, 90, 115, 150, 185, and 245. I think that's all of them. All right, cool. I've got my values in. Now I just need to play connect the dots. So 1 goes with 70. It also goes with 45, and we're going to talk about what that means, that it goes to 2 different places. We'll talk about that in a minute, or in a future lesson. 4 goes with 90, 6 goes with 80, 8 goes with 150, 9 goes with 115, 10 goes with 185, and 19 goes with 245. So that's what your mapping diagram should look like. Now, these numbers are ginormous. So this would be a huge graph. Even if we changed the scale, it would have to be humongous. So we're going to go ahead and skip that for this one. And that's a good lesson for you to learn. Not all representations are created equal. Sometimes it's better to organize information in a chart. Sometimes it's better to organize information on a graph. You have to decide what's best for your information. So for right now, the graph is not very effective for these huge numbers. So we're going to skip that part. But now that we've organized all of our data, we are going to look at answering, okay, we have all this data, so what's the domain of our data and what's the range of our data? Well, remember what I said, the domain and range are just going to follow your mapping diagram because they're already in number order. So the domain is going to be 1, let's see, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 19. And our range is going to be 45, 70, 80, 90, 115, 150, 185, and 245. You're like, squeeze them into my little brackets there. So now you know the domain and the range for this relation. We've organized the information in every possible way. We've analyzed it in every way that we can. So that is all we have to do for that set of data. Now, I want you to take a look at this last set of data. Okay, this last set of data is about iguanas. It shows the relationship between the age of an iguana and the length of the iguana. okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to go through and write all this information the way we've been doing. Write it as ordered pairs, write it in a T-chart, create your mapping diagram, and then I do want you to go ahead and graph, but I'm going to help you set this up. All right, if you look here, all of our numbers are positive. So that means we only want quadrant 1. We don't have a lot of room here, and we don't need the quadrants that have negative numbers because none of our numbers are negative. So I'm going to change this graph to look something like this. And these lines would go on forever and create all 4 quadrants if we needed them to, but we only need the positive quadrant, so we're only going to work with quadrant 1. Now, the other thing I want you to look at is your x values, which is the first set of numbers you have. They all are pretty small and they don't go up too high, so our x's are going to go up by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no problem. But if you look at the length, they get pretty big. They go all the way up to 45. So let's go with 10s on our y-axis. We've got 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Now the thing you'll find about graphs is that sometimes when they're handmade, they don't have to be super duper accurate, okay? So I want you to estimate for any large numbers. Try to find where they come together the best that you can. I want to see what you're able to come up with on your own, okay? Once you have analyzed the data and organized it in every possible way, then I want you to tell me what is the domain and the range for this set of data. Remember, they've got to be in number order and don't include any repeated values. Those are the 2 rules for the mapping diagram and the domain and range. So why don't you tackle that, bring it to class tomorrow, and we will be ready to rock and roll with domain and range of relations.